funny because they've been asking Brad Pitt on this press tour if he'd team up with Tom Cruise again because this movie has a similar vibe to it to Mission Impossible, which just came out, right? And Brad Pitt gave a very funny answer. But what's really funny is that clearly Brad Pitt saw Top Gun Maverick and said, I want one for myself. Because Brad Pitt not only stars in F1, but he and his team of producers over at Plan B made this movie. And they're clearly trying to duplicate the magic of Top Gun Maverick. And they're not taking any chances. Same director, same screenwriter, although no Christopher McQuarrie for a rewrite. Same producer, same composer. Even the posters look similar. Top Gun Maverick ended up being Tom Cruise's first and only billion-dollar film, although he's still working. Although this latest Mission Impossible doesn't give hope for another one. And, I'm sure Brad Pitt is wondering if, some of you have even said maybe F1 will surprise us and be the first billion-dollar film of the year. I'm not sure, and we're going to discuss that. World War Z is still Pitt's most successful film to date with about $500 million. He was technically in Deadpool 2, by the way, but literally, if, blink and you miss it. It's hard to tell, I think, if this will be a billion-dollar picture, or maybe even at least become Pitt's most successful picture, because while F1 is a fantastic piece of filmmaking, so are, in my opinion, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning and Final Reckoning, and those have not delivered for Cruise at the box office. Now, speaking of other movies, F1 also reminds me a bit of Tron Legacy, also not successful, although as the years have passed, I think a fandom has developed for Tron Legacy, as we've seen with the reaction to the upcoming Tron Ares. Although Jared Leto might have just thrown a real monkey wrench into that, we'll see. But Tron Legacy, of course, was also directed by Joseph Kosinski, with sleek visuals and fast-moving vehicles. And so, yes, F1 reminds me at points of Tron. And not just because of the Kosinski elements, but because of what Hans Zimmer does with the score. He goes full techno, and it is glorious. I'll tell you what, I was bopping my head for a good portion of this movie, doing a real, those brothers from Saturday Night Live. I'm definitely going to get this soundtrack. It's not available yet. As soon as I saw the movie, I went to Apple Music. I'm an Apple Music subscriber, and I was like, and they have like some music or from the film or inspired by the film, and I was like, get that out of here. I want Hans Zimmer's score. I saw, actually, courtesy of Warner Brothers, I got to see Hans Zimmer in concert, and it was incredible. And part of me was like, I think these are going to be added to your next concert, Hans, because these tracks are amazing. And I'm going to see the film again in proper IMAX. So yes, Warner Brothers, once again, was very nice to invite me to the premiere, as well as other critics and influencers at Radio City Music Hall. And I had a very good seat. I lucked out. No one ended up sitting in front of me. And they built an IMAX screen there. And I very much enjoyed the film, and I still really felt like I was in the race. But I didn't feel I was close enough. Because like a lot of other recent IMAX films, I feel that F1 is a cinematic work of art. And I encourage you to make the effort to have a pristine experience seeing this movie. So I'm talking premium screen, IMAX or Dolby. I know some of you I think 4X would be tempting, but I don't know. It's like, this is more of, again, it's less, I'm sure they're like, don't you dare say it's less commercial. But I think it's a little more, I don't know. It's very good. It has it's just so sleek and beautiful. You kind of want to sit still and appreciate it almost as it goes past you. And then also you might want to consider a matinee to make sure nobody disturbs your connection to the film, because it does have its slower moments, which we're also going to discuss. But as Castor Troy said, it belongs in the Louvre, and that certainly applies to this movie. One of the most beautiful things in this movie is Mr. Javier Bardem, looking like a snack and a half. I've never seen him look this good, even on the press tour for this movie. He should go to his hair, makeup, and costume team and be like, tell me what you did. He looks so good. Bardem, Pitt, and Cruise are actually all about the same age. And it's interesting because Bardem looks sharp as f*** here. Tom Cruise did in Dead Reckoning, and Pitt took everyone's breath away in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood a few years ago when he was on the roof of that house. I was like, oh my God. And when I saw it again with a friend, even my friend who rarely makes these kinds of comments was like, wow. But just like with Cruise in Final Reckoning, here, I think Pitt is starting to slide into Harrison Ford territory. At the premiere, they asked Pitt why he was playing a semi-retired race car driver, and he joked that was the only scenario they could come up with where he could be in an F1 movie as a driver. In other words, they shoehorned him in here. I bought it! But the other day, I was asking you, I believe on Movie Math, why nobody was seeing Final Reckoning. And somebody in the comments said, because nobody under 30 cares about Mission Impossible. And I think to some extent what you're saying there is Tom Cruise. And that really made me, again, it made me think. It made me wonder, as these movie stars age and they try to shoehorn themselves into the roles they had as younger actors, instead of maybe changing up the kind of roles that they take on, there's a school of thought that, I think it's a balancing act. I love that ageism is fading away. And I do think that this movie addresses Sonny Hayes as being older and where he is in his life at this point. But do some younger moviegoers just not care? Does it limit the audience when you do that? Especially because, maybe Damson Idris should have been the lead, maybe, the mentor is supposed to be like, it's like if Paul Newman's character in Cars was the lead instead of Lightning McQueen. Maybe that's the issue. Because, I don't know. I'm curious. I'm really curious to see how this movie does. Because, Tom Cruise has been struggling, and so has Ford. While you ponder that question, I'd also like to say, why not hit that subscribe button? That way you'll know not only when all of my videos go up, but if you hit the notifications bell, you'll know as soon as they go up. And so we're going to talk about how all these movies are going to do at the box office when they come out. This one's a week away, but I have other reviews coming up, etc. So I hope you'll hit that subscribe button and maybe the like button as well. I would certainly appreciate it. So how's the movie? It's long. It's 2.5 hours. I think that's half an hour or a little bit longer than Top Gun Maverick was. I loved it. But, while the movie was playing at the premiere, someone in front of me off to the side did glance at their phone. Uh-oh. But I thought the movie might be wrapping up, and I was a little sad because I was liking it so much. So when I caught the time on their phone, I was like, ooh, half an hour to go. So I was delighted. But yeah, for other people, it might be half an hour too long. I think that's because the movie has a lot of business talk and a lot of shop talk, which all about the world of F1. And for some people, it's not like wall-to-wall racing, although it does feature a significant number of races and some real take your breath away moments. Like there was one moment where the whole audience at Radio City Music Hall just gasped. And a couple of times I had to look away because I was so scared for the people on screen. But there is also a lot of business and shop talk, which I loved. I love that stuff. And I know some of you do as well. But other people might be a little bored during those sequences, which is why I warned you about maybe seeing it at matinee, because I think there are moments like that gentleman at the premiere where someone might check their phone. Like Kevin Costner's Draft Day, I loved getting Draft Day is such a good movie. I loved getting a behind-the-scenes look at these sports teams that are machines of people. Like, yes, they showcase all the advanced tech that is used in F1 today. I must say, I think it was Cars 3 or 4. The last Cars movie did a pretty good job talking about the world of racing today. But I also liked spotlighting the people, thank you very much, not humanized cars, but the people at multiple levels who make it all happen. These facilities are gorgeous. Woo! Woo! It's beautiful. And I think the only downside to working in sports, I would think, from an outsider's perspective, is the significant travel that it entails. But what a nice life. It's a little bit like how nice it is to work on a studio lot. It's just a very cozy, beautiful place to be. And I think provides a nice life and feeling of camaraderie, probably even more than the movie business, because the movie business, everybody's, for most part these days, work for hire. But here, you have a job with the team. And I mean, if anybody works in F1 or in a similar scenario, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. But it does seem like it provides a really nice quality of life at multiple levels. Sir Lewis Hamilton, thank you very much, is not only a producer on this film, but he's in the movie. I thought that was great. It's not too big. He's not like, trying to take over the movie or anything. I think this was a really good starter for him trying to get into the movie space. Because he's one of the drivers that they're going up against in the final race. They were like, oh, Lewis Hamilton's coming up on you fast. And I was like, that's awesome. And there are a ton of drivers spotlighted here. I mean, I wasn't sure. I was like, I think that's a real driver. And then in the end credits, and also I looked online, there are a lot of drivers in the movie because they filmed at real racetracks, again, beautiful, around the world during real race weekends. I guess they handed out those little Brad Pitt head cutouts and they were like, wave this around, we're going to film you. That was funny. I'm not sure how F1 fans will feel about this movie, but as someone not very familiar, or actually not familiar at all with F1 racing, I thought this was a great introduction, not just to the fandom and what it's like to attend an event, but to the intricacies and strategy of the sport. Watching this film, you start to learn what drivers need to accomplish to advance their teams, even if they don't outright win a race. I also got to learn how drivers work together, and I thought that was very interesting. But let's just say that Pitt's Sonny Hayes pushes the limits of what's allowed in F1 and then some and gets results. I don't know if actual F1 drivers pull these kinds of shenanigans, which I felt really seemed dangerous. They were portrayed as dangerous, but in a movie you're like, what a maverick! But in real life you'd be like, I'm gonna kill that guy. He was just really dangerous. And part of me wondered if the movie might inspire other real life racers to engage in bad, dangerous behavior if it's going to get these kinds of results. F1 fans, I'd be very curious to hear your feedback on this. Now let's talk driving sequences. Incredible, especially on a premium screen. Again, I was looking at a IMAX they'd built specifically for Radio City Music Hall. It must have been pretty big. That's how big it was to me in the second row of the balcony. And even though, again, I want to see the film again so I get that proper distance from the screen that I've come to enjoy, I still felt very immersed and had a great time. I loved it. I was a little nervous at first. I was like, oh, man. But as the movie played, I was like, this is amazing. There's one point where Sonny is supposed to be flying down the track. It's supposed to have that sensation of flying. And it really felt that way. I mean, his character has tears in his eyes. And I was like, those are warranted. That's beautiful, man. It's beautiful. Hans Zimmer, again, really steps up, delivering another iconic score. And he elevates not just the racing sequences, but other scenes as well. A lot of let's see the track. They have the drone, I guess, fly in and they're like, here's our racing headquarters. And you're like, this is amazing. I love it. Give me the tour. I'm having such a good time. Kosinski truly is a master of directing action at this point. And he's taken everything that he's learned from Tron Legacy and then later Top Gun Maverick and combined it into an amazing mashup for this movie. I've seen a number of racing films, as I'm sure many of you have, but I would say that these are the best driving sequences I've seen to date. How's the script? Let me tell you. When Joseph Kosinski was standing up on that stage at the premiere and he was listing off the people who worked on the film and he said, Aaron Kruger wrote this. Oh, I got nervous. I got real nervous. I was like, I've identified your problem. Who would ever hire Aaron Kruger? But I would say that Kruger doesn't mess up the movie. He delivers just enough story to give everyone else the excuse to do what they do best. But the one area where Kruger does fall flat is the female characters. Part of me felt that they might have been taking from trying to replicate the dynamic in the first Top Gun. I kind of got that feeling. And so again, they're really thinking Top Gun's very much on the brain with this film. So I guess I kind of understand that. And Kerry Condon does a really nice job as this movie's Jennifer Connelly. But there's something I want to touch on that, in fact, one of you reached out to me about as a female fan of F1. So there aren't a lot of women in the world of F1 in real life, as fans or in the sport itself. But more women are starting to come into this space. And for instance, there is a real life, for the first time ever, female race engineer, I was told, in Laura Mueller. And a lot of female F1 fans are very excited to see, one of their own up there making things happen. But in this movie, while Kerry Condon is playing the equivalent, She also, of course, is a romantic love interest for Brad Pitt. And I think there's some concern among female F1 fans, understandably so, that, you know, why are women in the space, and are they actually there to, you know, to be professionals? You know, I think, you know, it's a concern that I think that many people, for many different reasons, can relate to. And, you know, people fall in love at work. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, you should always notify human resources, but, you know, that happens. It happens. And I think that I want to assure you and this F1 BTC viewer that Kerry Condon's character, her abilities as an engineer are spotlighted, and she's very good. But I do think that there was an issue and that there were only really 2 women spotlighted who worked on the team. And both of them were depicted as romantic possibilities for coworkers. And that's where I think you start to have a little bit of a problem. I think one is fine, but then it starts, if you start to apply that to all the female, the women who work at the facility, then, you know, it starts to make it look like they're not there just for the love of the sport, maybe. So I didn't love that. But I'm not, you know, and also, by the way, there was another character, Sarah Niles from Ted Lasso, playing such a different role here, is Damson Idris's mother. And she's excellent. She really makes her small role pop. She's really good. She's, in fact, she might be, I think she's actually the best female character in the movie. But she too is going around making a lot of comments about how hot Brad Pitt is. So I'm not going to knock this movie for this element because it's such a good movie. It's such a good movie, and these actresses do such a good job. But I do think that this F1 team needs a human resources department. Plus, the movie also kind of makes up for it, or, you know, counters it, balances it out by spotlighting the burgeoning diversity in the modern sports world, particularly in like sports like this. When I watched Ford v Ferrari, which took place in the 1960s, let's just say it was interesting. I certainly noticed that women and people of color were not at all a factor. That was a world they just were not able, that, you know, we were not able to be in. Here, this F1 team has a female chief engineer, a black driver, many overall team members who are not only people of color, but also some who are women as well, and takes a chance on a much older driver. And these are all bets made by Javier Bardem's Hispanic former driver turned owner. And I thought it was really beautiful to see a newcomer to the sport, so to speak, taking a chance on other newcomers to the sport, so to speak. You know, like Bardem's character has such tremendous, unwavering faith in people that he looks for talent and heart where maybe others wouldn't. And I think that's such an important message in the film that I think even could, I mean, I guess they hit it just enough because, you know, you don't want the film to seem like it's pushing a message. In fact, it simply embodies one. And so I thought that was a really wonderful part of the movie. As for the cast, Brad Pitt is Brad Pitt, right? Like Top Gun Maverick, F1 is certainly a nod to the action blockbusters of the 80s and the 90s. And those movies needed a movie star to anchor them, which is what Pitt does here. There are a couple of shots, by the way, where he just gives classic movie star. It's almost comical. You're like, that's hilarious. I love it. In addition to reminding me, though, of Tom Cruise and Harrison Ford, he also called to mind Johnny Depp with a copious amount of tattoos and jewelry. You know, maybe overdoing it a bit much, you know, as Johnny Depp and some other gentlemen like that. I think some of us, you know what I'm talking about. Damson Idris is the hot new talent, not just in this movie, but in Hollywood as well. And I think he does a really nice job here, very nice, as the apprentice to the master. Although it does fascinate me that this movie flips around who's the focus. It's usually always the apprentice who's the focus of these stories. But as actors who are producers get older, they turn it around. Samson Kayo, here's another, I mean, there's a lot of really interesting social commentary and dynamics in this movie. Samson Kayo plays Idris's manager with Niles as his mother, and they not only show an excellent dynamic and tight-knit closeness as family and friends, but also having each other's backs in a sport that's still in the early stages of diversification. I thought that was also really well portrayed, and also very subtle, very nicely done. Bardem, again, not only looks great, but brings tremendous heart to his role. It's hard to make a suit sympathetic, but you were like, this guy's awesome. What a swell guy. Although I think, I think it helped that he wasn't always a suit. And you'll see. All right, so while other standouts are, of course, fan favorites, Shea Wingham and Kim Bodnia, always happy to see them. And I think that Abdul Salih also stood out very much so in the film. Look, F1 cost $200 million officially, although some are trying to say it cost maybe $300 million. There's been pushback on that number from Bruckheimer and Kosinski. They say it's not true. But you know what? I gotta say, no matter what the movie costs, $200 million, $300 million, it cost a couple of hundred millions. But I felt, even though obviously Brad Pitt, I'm sure, took home a pretty penny, it felt, watching the movie, like every single dollar was up on screen. I really appreciated that. If you liked Top Gun Maverick, if you like the Mission Impossible movies, you will like F1. Some of those things are good. I mean, it's nerve-wracking, right? Like, you're like, I really am not sure how this movie's going to perform at the box office. Now, could F1 have starred Tom Cruise? Because those are all Tom Cruise movies. That's a really interesting question. And I have to say my answer would be no. Because Sonny Hayes is a guy that doesn't take calculated risks. He's not someone who goes with his gut. I think Tom Cruise, when his characters take risks, it's because they're sure. They just believe they're going to will them to pan out. But Sonny Hayes doesn't know how it's going to go. But he just knows that the way things are going, not good. So he's going to go for it. He's a wild card. He breaks the rules, not because he thinks or does know better, but because the rules are stacked against him and he's running out of options and time. It's a role perfectly tailored to Brad Pitt, which makes sense because he's also a producer and he has been from the very earliest stages of this movie. But he executes it perfectly. It's beautiful. So, I mean, everybody just, I think everybody here, as I said, I agree, except for Aaron Kruger, who just doesn't get in the movie's way. Everybody else does what they do best. And it's a real joy to see. All right, so that's my review of F1. It hits theaters June 27th, and I would recommend seeing it in theaters on a premium screen. Get those premium tickets. All right, share your thoughts down below. Subscribe today. And of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.